moment. We're so glad that you're joining us this morning. We just love seeing everybody's names pop up on the live stream when we're watching together, and it really is a gift just to be able to be in community together, especially in this season. And there are a couple of things that we just want to encourage you to do right now. The first is that we'll be having a time of communion together today. So if that's something that you'd like to participate in, you can go ahead and take a moment to grab some supplies, whatever that looks like for you this morning. Maybe you have a cup of coffee with you. Maybe you want to go find some crackers from the kitchen, whatever works. And another thing that we want to encourage you to do right now is to share this live stream. It's a great opportunity to just be able to reach your friends who might be scrolling aimlessly through Facebook right now when instead they could be watching with us.
Absolutely. I think that for me, I'm especially excited to share this series that we're in called #TogetherTime with my friends. It's such an important and relatable series. So many of us are spending more time than ever with other people, including our families, our friends. I know for me personally, you've seen a lot of me lately. Pray for. But speaking of #TogetherTime, we've been thinking a lot about some of the people that we've been able to connect with in a deeper or different way in this season. So Ellen, how has that been for you?
You know, honestly, I've really been able to connect in different ways with my coworkers. Oddly enough, being at home sometimes and not with each other in the workplace, I've been able to get in touch with some of them, and we've had even deeper conversations than we would at work when we do more of the surface level stuff. So that's been a really unique opportunity.
That's so awesome to hear. And we want to hear from you. What's your answer to that question? Maybe you have a person in your life who lives on their own and you've been checking in on them more often than usual in this season. Or maybe you've reached out to your neighbors in a different aspect. Drop a comment down below and let us know who you've connected with during this season.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys. And for those of you who are jumping on, who are new to Movement, we're so glad that you're joining us today. And we just want you to know that you're welcome here. And we hope that you can jump right into this message series with us. Maybe a friend invited you to join, or maybe you just saw something on Facebook that somebody posted about this message series. But no matter how you found us, we just want you to know that as a church, we exist to help people find and follow God. And we want you to know that you're welcome here with questions and uncertainties. This is a welcome space. And so for those people, if they're new, what's the best way for them to get connected?
So it's pretty darn simple. We have a connection card. It's a digital connection card. So it's super simple. There's a link going to be down below. You just click on that link and it'll take you right where you need to go.
Yes, that's perfect. And you have a little bit of time right now before we start our celebration time, so it's a perfect time to fill out that connection card. And in just a few moments, we will have some time just celebrating who God is, followed by our next message in the series. And after that, we have something really special. We get to hear from a couple who has a ton of wisdom and insight into marriage and family relationships, so you're not going to want to miss what they have to share. So stick around for that. And we'll also have some updates from Eric, just in terms of what's ahead for Movement. We know how important it is to keep all of you in the loop, and we're all in this together as a community, and we want you to know what's ahead. And we're just so glad that you're with us again this morning, and we can't wait to continue celebrating with you.
Miracles when you move, such an easy thing for you to do. Your hand is moving right now. You are still showing up at the tomb of every Lazarus. Your voice is calling me out right
so glad that you're joining us today for our movement celebration. And we are in week 2 of a series that we're calling Together Time. Mm-hmm. And just like last week, I have my lovely wife, Kate, here with me. And we're going to have some conversation about relationships and hopefully just walk through this question together today and then throughout this series. And the question is, how do we continue to like those people that we love? And this is just so important because, like, in this season specifically, we spend more time in our relationships than almost anything else that we're doing. And so we know that can be a great thing, and that can be just a huge blessing, or it can be the source of a lot of stress. And so we just want to walk through our relationships. So last week we started where any good relationship starts, and that is with your faults.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Not really.
So, we started last week and just said that relationships really begin with us, right? I mean, they begin with us and more specifically with our hearts.
Right. And we talked about what is in us comes out of us regardless of who's with us. And we really kind of dove into this idea of understanding what is in our heart and trying to figure out what we feel and why we feel that way. Mm-hmm. And we talked about identifying that feeling, giving it a name, saying it out loud. Then we said you need to inform the other person in the relationship of your feeling. And then lastly, and most importantly, you need to invite God into your heart to help you soften your heart, change your view.
And to guard your heart.
Guard your heart,
yeah,
absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about a relational principle that I think is really going to build off of last week. And this principle is really challenging because I think most of us will hear it and probably deep down inside will have some sort of like, I see how that could be impactful, but it's really a challenging thing. And the reality is I think it's something that many of us fear, or we just say like, I don't really want to go there. Like it's not what I want to do. And so we're going to take a look at a passage of scripture that really just talks about this principle. And here's the thing about the Bible and what it says about relationships. The Bible just talks so much about relationships because God is relational. And he invites us into a relationship with him. He created us relationships with other people. And so he speaks about the significance of relationships. And specifically, and today, we're going to see how closely Jesus is connected to our relationships, like how he fits into our relationships. And so, when you hear this, my guess is you're going to, maybe find yourself saying like, hey, that sounds great in like the year 1900. Like that's way old fashioned. Like that was great for my grandparents. Not so great for today and where we find ourselves. Maybe have a little pushback against it. And as much pushback as maybe we would have against it, the people in Paul who writes this passage of scripture, like when Paul wrote this was like completely against the grain of culture. Like it was completely countercultural. And Paul was just like telling them something that they would have stepped back and just thought like, whoa, we've never heard anything like this. I mean, this was revolutionary because it really changed how people viewed, specifically how they viewed women and children. Right. And in that culture, women and children were oftentimes viewed as less than. And Paul is just going to say that when Jesus died on the cross, he didn't just die for some. He died for men. He died for women. He died for children. He died for all of us equally. And at the cross, like we all have that value, and we're all on a level playing field. And so, with that being said, let's go ahead and look at this passage and what Paul has to say in the context of relationships. We're going to be in Colossians chapter 3, and I'm just going to start in verse 18. It says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting to the Lord." And let me just go ahead and do this. Mic drop, right? Not so much, right? I mean, I think we hear that word submission, and it's really easy to think about like how like dirty that sound, like just like maybe dirty is a bad word for that, but just like
it is like a bad word.
Yeah, it is. And the reason why is we think it's like, okay, the husband orders the wife around and she has to do everything that he says because she's kind of has this role of a slave, but that's not what submission is about. I like to think it's like submission, and a guy's mission should really be to like help walk his family into a place where they're honoring God with their lives. And submission is really about a wife saying, you know what, I'm going to join you in that mission. Right. And so that's more of what it's like. But it doesn't stop there. Right. Paul talks more, right?
Yeah. In verse 19, Paul says, "Husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them. And right now, in today's society, that might, again, seem kind of archaic or like, what does that even mean? But back when Paul wrote this, men were known to be harsh with their animals, with their possessions, and especially with their wives.
Well, yeah, I mean, because in that culture, right, they were kind of like their spouse was viewed as a possession, and
it was more of a what can you do for me, not.
And Jesus comes along and says, like, you have value, right? Like you're of great value. And I think about just this whole idea of, you know, husbands, show love to your wives, wives, submit to your husbands, and I think about the significance of that from a just a relevancy of the Bible, because, you know, counselors and psychologists today would talk all the time that, like, a guy's greatest need is to be respected, and a woman's greatest need is to feel loved and cared for. And that's really what Paul's talking about here. He's really saying, look, this is about love and respect. You're when you submit, when you are willing to take that role with your husband, you're showing him the respect that he just so craves. And wives in the same way, like when a man shows you love and value and care and cares for you, like, it goes a long way, right? So, you know, I just thought that's kind of cool. But Kate, keep going on just what we're reading through in Colossians chapter 3.
Sure. So now Paul addresses children. And in verse 20, Paul says, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord.
Yeah.
And I just want you guys to know, we have this verse plastered everywhere in our home. Anywhere our kids could walk, they see this.
They don't listen to it, but it's everywhere. You know, we're hoping one day. So, you know, and it doesn't stop even there, though, because then Paul goes on and he says this. He says, fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. And just think about what Paul's saying there. He's saying, dads, like, be careful how you speak to your kids, because, like, it has the potential to crush their spirit. It has the potential just to discourage them. And I have to, like, take a step back, because as a dad, like, I know there are times where I miss the mark on this, and, like, I'll say something to, you know, one of our kids, and I just see, like, you know, the wind taken out from their sails, and it's like, man, you just know the power of your words can just have a huge impact. And so, you know, that's where it's like, man, there's so much power in this. But here's what's really interesting. God's plan for the family is not the best schools, the best stuff, the best vacation, the highest grade. God's plan for an awesome family is one where, you know, husbands are loving their wives, wives are submitting to their husbands, children are obeying their parents, and fathers are not irritating or discouraging their kids. And so he says that's what the family's all about. So, you know, we're done. We can just head out, right?
No. Not quite. Not quite. I think many of us have a little bit of pushback with this. I think some of us are still trying to figure out what submission really looks like, you know, today, and how do you get your children to obey you, and you know,
that's not going to work for my family, right?
And also, like, I'm just saying, submit to my husband. Have you seen my husband?
Come on now. Like, love your wife. You spend 5 minutes with her, and then, you know, you'll figure that one out. So
they do love me.
Yeah. Or, you know, like, students going, like, middle school or high school students going, like, how do I submit to my parents? Like, that's never gonna happen. They're clueless. They don't know what's going on in my life. And so we just make excuses like, hey, you know, everyone's in the same place, and we don't have, you know, everyone's family's messy, their relationships are messy, this is just the norm.
Yeah.
Or
we'll say, like, well, at least we're not as bad as so-and-so.
Yeah, we
got our stuff a little bit more together.
Yeah, like, we play the comparison game, or we start to try to just normalize our behavior and say, well, it's just what everyone is doing, and we just kind of settle in. And so I just want to read another passage that sums all this up. And once again, like, what Paul's saying here is so revolutionary in that time. Like, in that time, people with power used it for their advantage. Whether that was a government, they would use it to their advantage over other people. A family member with power, a business owner with power would use that power to their advantage. And Jesus enters the scene and he begins to teach just something drastically different. And what he teaches and the way he lived and what he modeled was really that we should use our power to serve and love those without power, like to love the powerless. And that had never been taught before. And so when Paul was asked, what does this look like from a relational standpoint? Like, how does this play out? It's no surprise that he responds with these words. He says, submit to one another. Submit. And he uses this idea of mutual submission, that we're to mutually submit. Like, everybody is to submit to everybody in your family. Like, this applies to husbands and wives and kids. It applies to all of your relationships. And when we understand like what the Bible says about this, here's the big key. Here's the together time like nugget of wisdom today. The together time key is you before me.
Right. And submission really is saying, I'm here for you. It's you before me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And submission doesn't matter who the other person is. It doesn't matter if they're young, if they're old, rich, poor. There's no one too low for you to serve, for you to put above yourself, to say, I'm submitting to you. I'm putting you before me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're not a follower of Jesus, like this is kind of an optional thing. I can just tell you that it'll make your relationships better. But if you are a follower of Jesus,
right, this is not an option. This is what Christ asks us to do because he modeled it for us.
Absolutely. And so I just want to give you a question that's going to help you with this, a question that hopefully you can begin to ask as you think about this idea of you before me. And it's really simple. It's just this. What can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? And maybe let's say this wherever you're at. If you're on your couch or at your kitchen table, just say with me, what can I do to help you? And I would just encourage you to start asking that, whether you're a student with your parents, maybe parents, to ask your
kids and really just get down on their level. Doesn't matter how old they are. They could be 3 or they could be 23, and truly just ask them, how can I help you? How can I put you before me? And it's more than just, can I get you a snack or can I get you a ride somewhere? It's really just honoring them and serving them and truly just saying, what can I do to help you?
Absolutely. And guys, when your spouse says, what can I do to help you? The answer isn't nothing. All right. Like that's, I don't need your help. But no, I mean, we just live in this place. Like when someone genuinely asks, how can they help? That we see relationships transformed because people put others before themselves. And so let's just talk about this concern that maybe many of us have as we think about submission. And this is a huge concern that I think can just kind of take over. And it's simply this, like, if I do this, if I submit in this way, like, I'm just going to get walked all over. I'm going to get taken advantage of. Like, my relationships, I'm just, I'm never going to gain anything personally out of relationship. Like, it's just going to be kind of this messy situation. And so that's why the second part of Ephesians chapter 5 is so important, because what does Paul say?
Right. He says, submit to one another as long as they meet my needs. Not really.
You wish.
He doesn't say that. That's the version Eric reads. No, he just talks about submitting to one another, and it's just how we really need to approach our relationship. And many of us approach relationships in a consumerism mindset.
Yeah, as a consumer.
Right. We go into it thinking our relationships are like Walmart or Amazon or Chick-fil-A, and as long as they're meeting our needs and we're able to get what we want from them, it's great.
Right.
But once, it's Sunday and Chick-fil-A's closed or Amazon doesn't deliver your package.
They deliver on Sunday now.
Well, they do, but not Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, but 2 days not working very well right now.
It's not right now.
So,
but
anyways.
as long as your needs are being met, you want to stay in relationship with them. The moment your needs are not being met or you feel like they've let you down, you're ready to kind of move on to somebody else. And we do that I mean, really, with retail, with food, and with people.
Yeah, I mean, some of us think that Ephesians 5:21 would say, like, submit to one another as long as they deserve it. Like, as long as they deserve to be submitted to, like, as long as they hold up their end of the bargain, then I'm going to put their needs before. But that's not what Paul says either. Here's what he actually says in Ephesians 5. He says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And here's why we submit to each other. And this is so significant. The reason we submit to one another is because we follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Like, we follow after what Jesus has done for us. And when we choose to submit, we become more like Jesus. And when we become more like Jesus, we live in those relationships as how God created us to live in them. Because, God ultimately is relationally created us for relationships. And Jesus really models that. And so when we start to think about, does the other person deserve it? Do they not deserve it? Should I? Shouldn't I? It really comes down to, it's not about deserving. It's not about whether you're going to get taken advantage of. It is truly about following in the footsteps of Jesus. Our reference point is not them. It's not us. Our reference point is Jesus. And here's what I know about relationships, right? They're going to get better, right?
They will definitely get better as long as you're willing to live in that tension a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to live in the tension and deal with it, then you're going to end up settling and you're going to miss out on what's better for you out there.
Absolutely. So here's your Together Time homework for this week. Just a couple of really quick things. So first thing is simply this, and the verse is going to come up on the screen again, but just memorize Ephesians 5:21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And the reason I want you to memorize that is because if you're going to do the second part of your homework, you're going to want to remember. You're going to want to remember and need to remember the first part, because the second part of the homework is what?
Ask yourself that question. What can I do to help you? And really think about that verse, submitting to one another. Again, not because they deserve it or they earned it, but because that's what Christ called us to do, is to submit to one another and to truly say, what can I do to help you?
Yeah, moment of transparency. I just encourage you, like, type in the comment section, who is it that you need to ask that question to this week? What can I do to help you? Is it your kids? Is it your spouse? Maybe it's your boss. I don't know who it is, but would love to know and just challenge you to do that. But, the Together Time key is you before me, because ultimately when we do that, we follow in the footsteps of Jesus. So, hey, I want to do something as we wrap up. And we asked you earlier to grab some communion supplies if you want to participate in this. But I just thought it would be cool to have a time of communion, because as we talk about relationships and we talk about the significance of them, it really does come to understanding what Jesus has done for us. And, so as I think about that and think about, Philippians 2 just talks about just humbled himself, and became nothing for us. He died on a cross for us. And I think about that, he put our needs. He said, you before me. I'm going to put your needs before mine. And he gives us this model. And so, Jesus, before he went to the cross, he took a loaf of bread and he broke it. And there you go. And Jesus said, this is my body that's broken for you. And he said, whenever you eat of this, do it in remembrance of me. So as you're ready, you can take the bread. And then Jesus took a cup and said to his disciples, he said, this is my blood poured out for you. For the sins of many, he says, look, this is about putting other people's needs before my own. And so whenever you drink of it, I want you to do it in remembrance of me. So as you're ready, you can drink from the cup. And then just pray. God, just thank you for this meal as a reminder of what Jesus did on our behalf, that he modeled for us what it means to have healthy, thriving relationships, and that is really to surrender ourselves and just put others before ourselves. God, no matter how challenging, no matter how, if people deserve it or not, God, would you just help us to be people who put others before ourselves? God, for some of us, we just need to understand that Jesus has done that for us. And today's a day that we just accept what Jesus has done for us. And, maybe we've for a long time just not been willing to say, well, here's how you can help me. You can help me overcome my mistakes and my pain and my failures. And maybe today's a day where we just say, Jesus, I need your help. And we would just do that today. Father God, help us to model Jesus in our relationships so that we can have the relationships that you've called us to have. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
Hold me now in the hands that created the heavens. Find me now where the grace runs as deep as your scars. Hold me from the clay. Set me on a rock. Call me by your name. Made my heart whole again. Lifted up,
And my knees know it's all for your glory. That I might stand with more reasons to sing than to fear. You pull me from the clay. You set me on a rock. You call me by your name. Made my heart whole again. So here I stand, high and surrendered. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, you love my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. And that grace holds the crown where the grave did. All my shame remains left for dead in your wake. You crushed those storage old days. You left no stone unturned. You stepped out of that grave, shouldered me all the way. So here I stand, high and surrendered. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, you love my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Your grace holds me now. Your grace holds me now. So here I stand, high and surrendered. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Here I stand, high and surrendered. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, but you love my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. grace owns me now. Your grace owns me now. Your grace owns me now. So here I stand, high and surrendered. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out.
All right, well, hey, I am with Mark and Deb Troyer today, and we're in the series Together Time, and it's all about relationships and how do you like the people that you love, and how do you really make sure that you continue to want to stay in love as well. And I was just thinking about different people at Movement who just have modeled, I think, just great relationships and can really just speak into this. And I thought of the two of you, and so I just thanks for being willing to have a conversation with me.
Sure.
Man, how long have you been married? Let's just start there.
36 years.
Yep, 37 in August.
37 in August.
Yeah.
Very cool. You have big plans for number 37?
No, if we're good at remembering it.
It's close to when Andrea's due date is.
Yeah.
So
cool.
maybe a trip to Florida.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Lord
A Florida
willing.
vacation.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you just mentioned Andrea. Let's talk about your family. Give us a little family breakdown of who all's in your family.
Sure. We have 6 children, and so it's Amy, Aaron, David, Samuel, Stephanie, and Andrea, and we're proud of them all. And also our sons-in-law and daughter-in-law, and then our
Awesome.
4 grandchildren, and one on the way,
on
as
the
we
way.
were talking about.
Yeah,
Andrea.
that's a large family. And tell me, when's the last time like all of you have been together?
Actually, it was a year ago. I
Yes,
think.
it was a year?
Yeah, Amy and our son, grandson Huck came.
They were here.
Yeah, they were.
And so
in Hunt.
everyone got together at your
Yeah,
place, or did you
yeah.
have to like rent a banquet hall, or?
Well, between our house and Sam's house, I think.
Yeah.
So cool.
And then here, yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of
That's
people
awesome.
to sleep
Yeah.
different places.
All right, so we're talking about relationships, and obviously you have plenty of experience as parents, and 36, almost 37 years
Yeah.
of marriage experience. So just tell me, like, what have been just what you would say are keys to a healthy relationship?
Sure, yeah, it would be our faith in God, and then our commitment to each other, and then also speaking the truth in love. So, our faith in God is, God gives us so much to build a lasting relationship through His Word, and then through the guidance through His Holy Spirit who lives in us.
Yeah.
So like that verse that you shared last week in the message, Proverbs 4:23, above all else guard your heart, for it is
Yeah.
the wellspring of life. That is a great verse. And then there's in Ephesians 3, there's speaking the truth in love. And as we talk about different passages that talk about love, it's not necessarily like what we immediately think of. Because of all the different things that we encounter in our culture, it's not this emotion or this passion necessarily, but it's like an acts of service. It's doing things for others.
It's love in action, right?
Yeah.
It's a love in action. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, in the commitment piece, we've always said divorce is not an option. So if you take that off the table,
Yes.
then you know that you're going to work hard at it. And
Did you ever say, like, divorce is not an option, death is, but divorce is not? Is that...
or you sleep on the couch is an option.
Yeah, that's. I mean, how many people don't
Right.
live by those that way?
Well, and we voice that in front of our children, that so they know, if mom and dad are not, seeing eye to eye, but they don't have to worry.
Right.
They're committed. They see a commitment there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, and there's just a piece with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you talk about there's a commitment there. Talk about how like being a follower of Jesus has impacted maybe your relationship with each other and with your kids.
Well, God gives us His promises, and in Hebrews chapter 13, you brought up that we both agree divorce is not an option. He says, I will never leave you or forsake you. And, so, it says in other places that, the husband is to be to his wife like Christ is to the church. And so, that is a promise that I've made to you is I will never leave you nor forsake you. And like you brought up with death, until death.
But please understand that I was not pointing you in that direction.
Well, And what,
So
what that means to me too is I see God's unconditional love. You know, He gave His Son Jesus for us, and so we need to mirror that to each other, but to our children as well. And so they're all unique. You know, all 6 kids had different interests, abilities, talents, and it's our job to help nurture that and grow that. And they're spiritual as well as spiritually, but let them know that we're behind them 100%. You know, you can go be a dog walker, or you can be a big executive. It doesn't matter.
I
It
think
doesn't
about
matter.
I think about your family, and just one thing. If I were your child, like, I would know for sure is like, hey, that you care and that you've got my back. Like, I know your kids have to know, like, mom and dad are there for me. They've got my back, no matter the good or the bad.
Right.
Like, they're there, and that's like really. You think about Jesus, like, the good or the bad. Jesus was, Jesus died for you, and so I think about that with you guys. Just thanks for modeling that for me and for people at Movement. It's really something to look at and be like, wow, if I can live in this way. So, we talk about mutual submission today. Just really, we've been kind of talking about that, but talk about submission,
Right.
and just how it's played a role in maybe your relationship.
So that goes right along with what we were talking about, is putting our spouse first. It's preferring others, preferring our spouse over ourselves. So it's that love in action that we were talking about.
Yeah, and that's something Mark has modeled, to a T. These last few years when I've been having health issues, and I knew I was number one, and it's brought us closer together. It's made me look at things that normally wives would pick about their husbands, like just little things, and say that's insignificant. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we're together. And we do a lot of things together. We go to the store together. We go to the green space together. All this exciting, great adventures. Right?
How extravagant! The green space.
Right. But how many times have you heard, when we're retired, my husband's going to drive me crazy. But we do still spend time together.
That's awesome.
And then, so God's taught me that. And
That's so cool.
And we mutually decide on big decisions.
Right.
Nobody goes
Yep.
out and buys a Ferrari and then says,
Right.
"Oh, look what I brought home." And then we lived by a budget from the first time we got married, and that really helped.
Yeah, we've both
Yeah.
been on the same page with that. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's eliminated a lot of, maybe problems of just being able to say, well, for grocery this week, this is how much you have to spend. And then, if I'm, looking at something, we talk about it, so it's helped.
Hey, I just thank you for taking time. I mean, I think a lot of what you said speaks directly in the heart of like our relationships and just where people at Movement, but just people in general, where they find themselves. So thanks, and thanks for being a model for so many people.
Sure.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, once again, thanks for joining us for our online Movement celebration. Hey, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to first give you an update on just where some things stand in this season, and then also just give you an update on our generosity as well. As far as where we stand in this season, as far as reconnecting from a physical standpoint in person on Sunday mornings, we rent space from the school, and we're kind of at the mercy of the school. And one of the things right now is that we will not be able to meet at the school until at least June 30th. That's not an us decision, that's the school decision and the state's decision. So until then, we will not meet regularly on Sunday morning. We are working on some options on how we might be able to get people connected in community before that, and we will keep you posted, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. Hey, the second thing is I want to give you an update on generosity. These times are just a little bit different and unique, and one of the things about that that many churches are experiencing is just a change in what their giving looked like, and just having some questions about how to meet budget and stuff like that. I want to give you an update that over the months of March and April, because of your generosity and because of your commitment to Movement and to Made for More and the mission to help people find and follow God, over the months of March and April, we've actually been able to meet our budget, which is super cool. It just helps us to continue to be able to do the ministry and the work that God's called us to, helps us to move the mission forward, and also serve our partners like CCHO, the Children's Home of Ohio, and Lifeline, and some other really cool things as well as pay for our expenses that continue to come in on a regular basis. And so if you would like to continue to give towards the mission, we just thank you for that. You can go to movementfinley.com/give, and you can give there. So just thanks for your generosity. We really are a church that models generosity in so many ways in our community and beyond. And then finally, right now, in just a minute, I'll be hopping over to Zoom. I'd love for you to join me. Love to have some connection time if that's something that you're able to do. And so the link is on the screen for Zoom, or the Zoom ID number. And thanks again for celebrating with us. Movement, go and be the church.